Excellent. Well, it's 10:45 on the dot pretty much, so let's get going. So this is magic money, bananas, peanuts and profit sharing. So we're really going to talk today about taking you through what the profit share is and what the League of Geeks have done and the problems we've encountered and how we've solved them. So that's me. I'm Blake Mizzi. I'm a co-founder and director at League of Geeks. And this is League of Geeks if you haven't seen us before. And these are my two other business partners. So it's Trent Custers, he's also director and co-founder, and Ty Carey as well. So we're the three amigos. You may remember me from my last year's talk, There's No Business Like Game Business, where we took you through crushed dreams and everything else about games business. So this is going to follow in the same design track as that. So we're going to have a bit of fun with it, but we're also going to do some little deep dives as we go. So League of Geeks, Armello is our debut title. So this is the game we produced, and this is the game that this talk's primarily going to talk about how we funded. This is what the game looks like if you're not very familiar with it. So what's my background? So I've worked at Blue Tongue, I've worked at Taurus Games, I've worked in Japan, I've done internships at Volkswagen in Germany, I've been an industrial designer, I've been in real estate, I've even worked for a Swiss oil company. So don't hold it against me. So now I'm trying to make amends by making murdering animals in fairy tale games. But we are talking about profit sharing. So it is a system in which people who work for a company receive a direct share of the profits. That sounds pretty good to all of us, I think. It can be used as a bonus. So that's an extra payment on top of salaries or money received, which sounds awesome, yeah? It can also be used as deferred payment. So people aren't paid and they're promised payment at the end of a project on a profit share basis, which can sound like slave labour or a scam. But under necessity and the right terms, this can be very, very helpful and it can help fund your project. So we've looked at it. Profit sharing is a bonus plan on top of paid work. It's also a deferred payment. There's also a combination of the two methods as well. And this is where League of Geeks launched into. So why did we profit share? Well, for us, it came from necessity. We didn't have a lot of money at the time. We had big dreams and big ambitions. So to try and fill that, we had to work out where do you get your money from? So we didn't have piles of it, and we wanted to keep control and IP, and we didn't really want to try the publishing route. We really wanted to try that ourselves as well. So that set our constraints, and we also wanted to have a reward for everyone. So we wanted to have everyone who was involved in the project reap the rewards if the project was a success. And that started the cultural change within our company as well, or from the very beginning of the company. If you're rewarded, then everyone gets to enjoy it, everyone feels good, and we all can end up on the beach somewhere until we make the next game. But there's many pitfalls with our profit share system. And I've encountered along the years, and a lot of people talking to me, there are innumerable traps. So if you've got questions, hold them to the end, because I've definitely talked to a lot of people about profit share, and I've talked lots of people out of doing a profit share. So there's a lot of questions you have to ask yourself. So I'm just throwing these all up against the screen, but what happens if the project fails? Can the profit share pay out reasonable returns? Can the company administer the profit share? How can the company afford the profit share? Does the tax, are there complications? Is the system even fair? Is the system you're designing just, screwing people? How do you track individuals' profit share percentages? I've seen systems where people throw in 100 hours at the end and go, look, I did all this extra work that you can't account for and I get a bigger share of the profit now. So how do you track this and keep the visibility and transparency there? How do you structure your system? There's actually many, many ways to skin this cat. And what happens if the payouts get really big? That can be a problem. And what happens if they get really small too? Is your reputation going to survive you running a profit share system? So what have we done at League of Geeks to fund Armello? We came about, as I said, from necessity and also trying to reward people who worked on the project. Part of our goal was we wanted to attract top-tier talent. There was a lot of people we had worked with in the past and we wanted to work with who we couldn't afford. But I think under a very generous profit share system, they would be at least incentivized to give it a try if we could sell them the dream of the project. We also want a robust system. So that's not just robust from scrutiny and from people picking it apart, but also robust from an agile sense. So someone starts the project with full intentions to continue, and after a couple of months, they have a baby, life changes, they exit. How do you handle all that agility? How do you handle new people and scaling of the project if the project has to take a major pivot point throughout the course of its development? So we designed the system called the log point system. Step one, we did nothing about the point system. We went away and designed the game. So I think it's important to start with a dream and a project that you're actually designing a system for, because different games and different projects require different systems. So this system that we've designed, it probably is a one-shoe-fits-all now, but it wasn't when we started. So we designed the game. That starts with the GDD, and that starts with numerous docs and playtesting sessions with beers and pretzels and chips. We did that for about 10 months. We scoped it, but then we stopped. Once we had a design we were really happy with, we actually stopped and we scoped out over 4 days every task in the game, every asset. We started drawing wireframes because we had it from the GDD. We started estimating every single little asset, how long it would take. So that came from the completed game design. We also estimated the time that would take to accomplish every single task. And we estimated about 6,000 hours. Or 750 full business days. And I just want to remind you, there was only 4 of us at the time working at night. So we had a freak out. But that was okay. At least we know what we wanted. We tried to go back and scale back the design, and we really realised that to hit the potential we wanted to hit, we didn't really want to scale or cut anything. But also we were then pretty determined to commit ourselves to build what we just planned to build and not really feature creep, because we were already playing the game in paper form. So we actually gave each allocated task that had a hour value only, a points value. They roughly accumulated to 1-to-1, but it wasn't a certain 1-to-1. So how we valued that was a lead developer or a senior at their level in whatever trade it is, whether art or code, if they could complete a task within 3 hours, the task would get a 3-point value. If it took a student 6 hours to complete the same task, it was still worth 3 points. So we determined an anchor point for the value of points. And we also put a bit of contingency in there. So we designed the system. So we said there was 6,000 hours. We thought, okay, things happen. We're going to say it's 7,000 points in the profit pool. Okay, where do we go from here? So we've got a pool. We decided actually, how are we going to fund the rest of the project? Because profit share alone is not going to be enough. So we decided from the business point of view with League of Geeks, doing the administration, recruiting, onboarding of new people, and all of those grants that you have to do and all those factors, we would just do with sweat equity from ourselves. We wouldn't award ourselves points for any of that. Points were only allocated for game tasks. So tasks on Armello that were for assets or for code that was developed. We also self-funded from our own cash all the business costs, if there was legal fees or accountancy fees or anything else like that. So we didn't take those fees from any grants or anything else we did to fund Armello. So we really had a separation of church and state there. And we used any grants we achieved at the early days, which was like a 30,000 Film Victoria marketing grant. We pretty much poured all of our grant money into marketing the game. So later in the project, we had a couple of shifts. So I'm jumping forward quite a bit, but we had a Kickstarter shift to PC and Steam, and that brought us to our beta. And that was a new funding area. We also had early access, which brought us to V1.0. PlayStation helped us come to PS4, and we self-funded Xbox later from the profit share system. And right now we're in development for Armello's original return back to its tablet dreams. So the log point system. We started with heaps of research. We started talking to a lot of other developers and looking at a lot of sales that you could expect from other titles, what their units were, what their revenue was, how many units they sold in reality, not just the big pipe dreams you hear from games that really hit blue sky money. We actually cut those games out of our research. We really just wanted to see what was the good, solid, well-executed game bringing in. And we tried to get a good scope of statistical analysis there, and we started modelling all these scenarios. What happens if we sell 100,000 units or 50,000 units or 20,000 units at this price point, if the platform holder was taking this much, if we do these many regions, if we translate to these many languages. So we started modeling all these different scenarios, and that allowed us to design a structure. So we also had to accommodate our goals within the structure. So reminding what the goals were, we needed to fund Armello, we wanted to attract top tier talent, we wanted a robust and agile system that was scalable and adaptable to the project needs, and we still wanted to have reputations by the end of it. So we wanted this to be a success. So we designed a system where the revenue stream would come in, the distribution and director investor cut and the expenses were all taken away. So the distributor cut I'm referring to if there's Steam or any other platform holders like Apple or anyone, they get their cuts first. Any expenses obviously, and the remaining is profit. And then from that profit, pre-tax, this is something I'll go into a bit later, we split all that profit 50-50. So 50 would go to a profit pool for the points contributors. The other 50% would go back to League of Geeks. So here's this profit simulator, and we started modeling all these scenarios. So we started finding out what was a low expectation, a high expectation in these ranges. So what was our best expected success? What was our most likely outcome going to look like? What was our miserable happy figure? So that's where everyone goes, that was okay. Could have been better, but we did it. And what is a disaster? And we really want to know that. And we also really want to know how much was a log point worth? How much is that hour worth? So many people start a profit share system and never consider how much that time is going to translate to at the end of the project. So we divided the expected profit by the number of points. Ooh, there we go. And we have to ask ourselves, if we were a contributor or a contractor, is it worth our time? Would we sign up to this deal? Is it worth our time and our risk as well? So we started coming up with some figures based on the research we'd done. And these are just estimated figures. We thought, okay, look, a disaster's about, at worst case scenario, with the deals we can pull off and stuff, we're looking at about $25 per hour for a contractor's time. That's like above the award rate, but a contractor would be pretty pissed because it's well under a contractor rate. Miserable happy figure, $50 an hour. At the time, a lot of devs, because after the crash in Australia, $50 an hour for a contractor wasn't great, but people would be like, it hasn't worked well, but I'm not super upset for my time spent. There was also the most likely outcome and what we thought was the best success. But at the end of a profit share, trust is everything, because people are trusting you that you're going to pay out and you're going to administer the system honestly and with integrity. Also, our internal reputations in the games industry were on the line. So we went away and we built largely Trent back here put together the original directors' contracts, which put down the basic groundwork for the profit share system in legal terms. We also put together the contractor agreement, so that was the other end. And that's how the contractors were going to be administered under this and how they would need to service us, put in their reports, get their tasks, and I'll explain all this, but it was actually how they sort of functioned under our system. We started plugging all those points into our project management software tools. We've used a number of tools, but the current one we're using is Pivotal Tracker, but we have gone through a number of point systems. Trent also, he's here, he developed the onboarding kit. So it's the log introduction kit. So every new person we would recruit, we'd deliver this welcome pack, and it'd explain the system, got them onto the project and the core values of the project, but also explain how the profit share worked. Then I went away and we started modeling all the mathematics and putting everyone in, all the tasks, and trying to, we had a system of exporting the tasks as CSVs out of the point systems every quarter or every month. And I'd validate those with the leads and all the other guys, whether those tasks had been achieved, whether they'd been approved, whether that 3-hour code task was still buggy or needed to go back for re-edit. And once they were approved, they were entered into the system, they got ticks next to them, or there might have been adjustments. Maybe a task that was worth 8 hours actually took 16 and there was blowout and it wasn't the contractor's fault. We'd misscoped, so we would do adjustments. And we would do these regularly throughout the course of the project. And that was critical because it meant that we were always fairly up to date. We're not reconciling 6-month or year-old problems. And part of that communication came down to a system when we started handing out log points pay slips. So this is no money's being issued at this point. This is still in development. We're nowhere near handing out profit, but I started quarterly handing out profit share pay slips. So it's where your current percentage of the profit or the project is standing, how many hours have you currently put in by our records, how many points have you actually earned by our records. At that point, we were tracking hours versus points, and you could see that some of the best contractors we're working with were actually slightly under their hour rate to their point rate, and some of the younger guys were definitely over their hour rate to their point rate. But at least everyone knew that we both knew each other what we knew. So they could go, hey, there's a problem. I think I've earned a lot more points than what you're telling me. And we could clear this up right away. You can see there on the right as well, I'd put together these reports. So where the state of the project is, because some people have worked for points, but maybe haven't worked with us for 6 months. So they get these reports every quarter. This is the current state of the project. These are the couple of delays we're hitting, but these are some of the successes we've had. And come along for Friday night drinks and you can ask us more questions and we'll talk to you more about it then. And this is the state of the current build. But then, of course, with the profit share, things get complicated. We had to have, as I mentioned before, that clear separation between church and state. So what is an Armello cost and what is a log cost? This never came into question with anyone, but we were very forward and proactive about these costs that we're spending right now are not coming out of the Armello profit share. League of Geeks is paying for this, we're paying for this, not you guys. And we were very clear about how that was broken down. There were tax implications, and we really had to pull everything pre-tax. So we were working with a lot of foreign guys, foreign contractors as well as local, and everyone had to invoice us inside the quarter to slice their money out of the profit share pool. And then League of Geeks would deal with our own tax issues as well. It also gets more complicated when you have foreign tax withholdings and other issues like that. I can talk to them more about that afterwards. We also had to discuss what happens with this is Project Armello, but what about merchandise? Porting of Armello, DLC. A lot of content that's developed for the game is going to be monetized in other ways, and how does that profit share fold into the game? Also adding more platforms. So as I said, we've added Steam along the way and PlayStation 4. And with this expansion in scope, we had to add more points. So we actually had to weigh down and sit down and go, okay, if we're going to do these platforms and it's going to cost us this much time, how many more points can we afford to pull into the project? We treated the points like money. We treated them as a hard budget. We couldn't just keep throwing imaginary money or bananas into the bucket and then keep handing them out. We were super strict about how we handed these points out. Also, we had questions about Kickstarter when we launched our Kickstarter. Do people start sharing in the profit share immediately from Kickstarter? Because at that point, we'd start hitting positive, but we hadn't launched the game. And the same questions came up at early access. So we withheld all that money to finish developing the game until we hit V1.0. That's where we drew the line in the sand. We communicated with everyone. We even did a period where we started buying back points. So there was a couple of people who had been on the project for a very long time or had only earned minor point shares in small quantities, and from an administration point of view, and also handing out checks to them and towards the end of the project, it was just in a better position. We thought we'd take the forward step and just start doing a sweep of buybacks. So if people were under 20 points, we started offering them a fixed fee and just buy those points back at a fair market rate. Okay, so League of Geeks and Armello. We launched way later than we expected. So that was something we hadn't foreseen. And that put a strain on the points and profit share system and with the team, but we managed to work through that. And I think there was very open communication, transparency helped carry that a long way. We also didn't launch on iPad as we originally planned. We launched on Steam and PlayStation 4. There was a huge scope creep. We ended up not with 7,000 points in the project pool, we ended up with 11,686 points that were issued out. I think we had a target of about 12,000 and we actually bought some of those back. At launch, Armello's hard cash costs, this is not sweat equity, but cash costs, sat at that figure. That's at launch at September 1 last year. But we were practically cost neutral. So through the course of some of our grants, which didn't add up too much, but they were critical to us moving forward, our Kickstarter, our Steam Early Access, our own savings to a degree, I'm calling into that as well. We were close to cost neutral. We weren't quite there, but we didn't have to earn all of that back. So we're already in a pretty good place. We were feeling good. And by the end of our first year, we've pushed nearly 300,000 copies of Armello on Steam and PlayStation 4. So we're a premium title, and we haven't done any deep discounting. So that's where we're close to where we're standing right now. We've just launched Xbox One on our anniversary. So the figures I'm also going to show you aren't going to include sales from that, as we haven't received a cent yet. And iPad's currently in development. So we're going to go back and close that full circle of that development where we are. I've repeated that slide. Here we go. So that was Armello's gross revenue 1 year after launch. So that's gross rev. So we were pretty chuffed with that. I will say it was below our best or our hopeful expectations. And they were our hard costs, and they were higher than we'd expected as well. So through the course of project twists and turns and hiccups, you end up spending more than you planned to. So that's where we'd ended up. And foreign currency is a real pain in the ass. So I've become very good at foreign currency exchange, but it's difficult when you're doing sales with tax withholdings in foreign territories a couple of months between receiving those payments in potentially a different currency than the currency that it was originally purchased in. And, a different localized region isn't charging GST, but they're outside of Australia selling to Australians, so then we have to accommodate for the GST inside those sales backwards from the retail point of... Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. So, but we handle that. But we ended up in the end of the first year with a net profit there. So we were pretty stoked, actually. And that's what that divided down to the profit pool. So remember that was divided 50-50 between the company and the contributors. So that figure's definitely not as big as we'd hoped. We're feeling pretty good, but we were pretty happy that it at least ended up at the end of the first year, as I think I showed you earlier, that our sort of miserable happy figure was about a $50 point per hour. That was now when we originally put those estimations in, we didn't really have a scope of time frame of how long that it would take to earn that point, or the larger or the best output points. But in the first year, we feel pretty good that contributors have got at least $50 for their time from the first year's profits. So, as I said, that's just the first year. So, Armello's points are lifetime. So, hopefully our contributor is going to be earning points for many years to come, and that value will increase with each quarterly profit share payment that goes out. We are expecting that next year's profits to be somewhere in the same ballpark, if not better, with the way we've been administering DLC, in-game items, and launching new platforms. But you can't predict the future. So how did it all work out for us? Well, we built and shipped Armello. Like, that felt pretty bloody good. It happened. It was this crazy ball of dream between Trent, Ty, and myself and a few others, and bloody oath, we did it. And people liked it. The review score started climbing. We started getting nominations and an IGF finalist. Kotaku called us out as the Australian Game of the Year. There was, it was awesome. Felt really, really good. It felt really good to build a game that we were proud of. I'd worked for many other studios, and we built cool games, but they ship well before they're ready. And it felt good to build something from scratch. But what were the consequences of the profit share system? Now I've got an administration nightmare. So this is just this quarter's spreadsheet that I've been working with the accountants and the bookkeeper for the last 2 weeks. So there's just some figures in there, but it's like you can see all different kinds of color codes, invoices that haven't been paid through or paid through late, ones that fall into the wrong quarter, some that are in the US. So it is a bit of a nightmare, and it is a very mechanical, manual process right now. Even the way I have to issue out all of the each payslip, it's very mechanical at the moment because there's so many differences with each individual's payslip. I can't auto-generate those right now, but hopefully that's something we can administer and fix in the future. It does take a considerable amount of time. It's probably a good 10 days in a quarter, at least. And that's me working hard and fast and not mucking around. There's other consequences to it, and there's been good and bad. So the good, or I guess another bad consequence is half of our company profits from the game are going away. But the good side of that is that we're sharing with the team. And that feels really bloody good. And it feels really good when we ask the team to push really hard to hit a Steam update or a big sale. And everyone's working as a team for the same goal because we're all going to enjoy the sales. It's not just going to the grumpy grey-haired boss in the corner who's getting a bit fatter around the belly every quarter. Everyone has a good time. And when we do hit a good sale, and it goes really well, everyone stands up and claps and cheers. And we all break open beers, and everyone knows the next profit share is going to be that little bit better for everyone. And that feels, I've never had a fuzzy feeling like that. That's great to deliver those news. And that has changed the entire culture of our company. And I've never been in a company like this, so that's been wonderful. And the dedication of the team, like no one is dragging their heels or mucking around. And that's just remarkable. But as I said, the consequence of that is we're not building up a big war chest. From the half of the profits that League of Geeks receives, we're still covering a lot of costs. And I'll give you some of the ideas about church and state. So I'm just checking time, we're still good. So if a contractor or an employee is working on Armello on tasks and they're being paid throughout the day, by the way, we're not issuing any more points out now, we've put a lock on that. That gets paid from Armello fees or Armello costs. If they take annual leave, can we justly charge Armello for their annual leave? So at the moment, we're paying for that from League of Geeks. It just gets in all these grey zones of what becomes an Armello cost and what becomes a League of Geeks cost. So we want to upskill the team and we want to take everyone to GDC. It's not fair to charge the contractors who aren't in Australia or aren't in the team and getting a free flight to GDC. Not fair to charge those guys. So League of Geeks pays for that. So it's all these different questions about company insurance and who pays for what. So we've definitely erred on the side of caution there. Armello's doing well, but well enough to build a new game, that's still something we're working out right now. I guess the big question is, would we do it again? I think once you've been operating a profit share system like this, it's very hard to go back and do something different, especially when there's been such a fundamental cultural change within the business. And I guess the feel-goodness of running a business like this. And I don't think you can underestimate that. So much so that we're pushing very close, and we're probably going to become the first B Corp business in the world, which is a business for good. It's not a non-for-profit. It's just businesses that are trying to be good, responsible business. It's like what fair trade is to coffee. So it's one thing like we'll try and do is we'll try and purchase our electricity from clean suppliers and everything else. It's just changed the way we think about how we are operating our company and how we treat our staff. And also that comes into our thinking about how far away the top people in our company are earning compared to the bottom crew. So that's definitely something we're considering. But it does feel good when you see some people in our team have earned nearly as much from their profit share now as they have from their first year wages. So that's pretty awesome. That's not true for everyone on the project, but some people have been in that lucky position. But definitely profit shares aren't without complications and problems and risks, and we have had to adapt our profit share system immensely throughout the course of development. And you know, a lot of things we foresaw at the beginning came true, and we managed to dodge a lot of bullets that way. A lot of things we didn't see coming, we had to solve along the way. I do feel, talking to a lot of people around the world as we travel, that we have probably one of the most robust and I'm going to say well-executed profit share systems that I've seen around the world. It's also probably one of the more complex. So I definitely wouldn't be launching this on anyone willy-nilly. There's definitely simpler systems out there. But also simple systems, I think, also come with their own traps of they're not as reliable if someone, you know, argues against the system or pulls out early, or you've got, you know, congestion with tasks. I've deliberately left plenty of time for questions. So I figure we're going to open up to a bit of a forum, and you can just hit me up with as much as we like. We can tear apart the profit share system in games industry. We'll start over here.
I actually had two kind of things, but I'm not quite sure if you did answer it during the thing, but just I would be interested to know, you put up like the hard costs that you ended up having, and you said they were more than you expected.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of percentage did you allow initially of like, oh, it's probably going to be this,
Yeah.
probably built in a buffer, but
Yep.
then what did it actually?
It's very fair. So usually when I do project accounting or budgeting, I usually work on a 20% buffer, and that's usually pretty safe what I work with. So some of the hard costs that we overspent on was just initially because we went to different platforms. Also, different opportunities come up, and I think a lot of the time we've been incredibly aggressive about taking on some of those opportunities, not despite the cost, but wearing the cost with the confidence that we'll earn that back later. And that is definitely something to consider in how you operate the business. Yeah. Cool. In the middle here.
Doesn't the point system kind of reward quantity or quality?
No. Yes, well, it does, but in a good way, because every task is fixed points. So in terms of quantity, if you're going up to that agile scrum wall and you're tearing through more tasks, completing more tasks, the project's getting done faster. So, and you're getting rewarded because you're earning more points, because you're awesome.
Did you ever get any pushback from anyone on the team about that kind of?
Not from that, because it seems really fair. And actually, once you're in it, it's remarkably transparent and fair, especially if you're a very slow worker and you see the guy next to you, and he could be 2 years younger than you with less experience, but he's a young gun and he's smashing his tasks, he's executing them well, they're bug-free, and he's earning twice the points that you are. It's hard to argue against that when the clear data's there. It takes the ego out of the room, up the front.
How did you find that the profit share system worked in terms of the team self-managing? Like you said, if someone's working slower, does everyone kind of chip in and help that person move faster, or give them advice or criticism? How does that work?
There is that. There's definitely that. And I think it's definitely a system where the spotlight's on everyone. And it's not in a mean way. And we definitely, from the production point of view, and Trent, you're probably best to talk to him afterwards a bit better about this, but there was definitely a lot of coaching along the way. Also checking in. I think this is just good management practice. Instead of waiting for the end of the task, find out how the progress is going. Also set an expected date. This is a task worth 3 points. I know it's only 3 hours. You're part-time. It's Monday. We'd like to see it done by Tuesday, if that's great for you. And they're like, yep. Coming up to Wednesday, it's like, is Thursday still looking good? Is it still, a 3-hour task? You haven't really blown out beyond that? Just that check-in. And then if something is definitely wrong, we can find out why. Or if we know that someone, actually, I love this data analysis side of it for you. So every quarter I'd pull in and export all the points. and you can just see the people, and sometimes the quietest person who's just destroying and gobbling up points and tasks. And their work's solid. And often a lot of people who sometimes work slower, the tortoise method, who work a bit slower, but they're just really reliable and they don't have to go back and fix their own tasks and mistakes up. They just earn solid points. And it was really interesting to get that kind of data from every staff member. Yeah.
How did you handle like if a particular task needed to bring in someone else?
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. So often we would just create a new task, or we'd split that task up, but more often than not, we'd create a new task with new points values. And that's where that contingency came from. And that's also where we had to constantly evaluate the economy of our system. So we were looking at how many points we were chewing out. We're going, actually, are we chewing through the same number of tasks that we expected that we had points allocated against? And if we're sort of bleeding, hemorrhaging on the point side, just like you're hemorrhaging on money, if you're spending too much to complete the same amount of work, we'd have to reassess and maybe look, we've got a little bit of cash from this grant, we have to just start paying for the next few tasks with cash because we can't let the points run away too far. So it was just something we had to constantly evaluate that economy.
Another thing,
Yep.
I believe you mentioned about it, but how often did you actually pay out those profit shares?
Yeah, I haven't mentioned that. So right now, from V1.0, from that line in the sand, we're doing it every quarter. So I know the contracts, I think they stayed every 30 days, but talking to everyone, it was just too much of a nightmare to do this every 30 days. And even once we do it every quarter, it still takes us 30 days to process everyone's the month after at the back, yeah.
You mentioned that you've changed the profit share system a lot over time. How did you deal with, did you ever have to change the actual contracts? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, no, so really good. So one of the things, as I said, was about the 30 days. We've had to expand to the quarter. A lot of the stuff hasn't been forward-facing to the team about how their contracts have changed, because they haven't really. At the very high level, the contracts remain the same. It's really how we function with the tax implications, the foreign currency transfers, how we go through a couple of phases of approving points in the background and how I administer that. It's just really how we balance that. That's where the main challenges are. And like, as I said, we had to do a buyback. And we had to start balancing the economy and start that was the things we hadn't considered at the beginning. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just wondering about the tax treatment of the points
Mhm.
from an Australian perspective. Is there anything weird that you have to do there? Or is it...
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Yeah, take me over the coals. No, we've tried to be absolutely above board everywhere we can. So one of the things is I know Steam and a couple of other platforms don't charge GST for Australian sales. So we've had to go backwards, and that's why I said it got very complicated, and work out where the initial purchase was done at what currency, and then work out as best we can the GST on those sales and pay that back. Also, we get a couple of tax treaty agreements, like with Japan and with the US, and how do we feed back those tax withholding credits back into the system. So we've had to work all this stuff out, and it's been a complicated bit of nightmare, but we've shielded most of the team from that. So, yeah.
I've got another tax question from an employee's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For employees who are also earning profit
Mm-hmm.
share, is there a different tax treatment for them paying tax for their salary versus the profit share, or is that just kind of as additional salary?
It counts as additional salary, but that's a good question. So initially we had everyone on the point system were all contractors, 100% contractors. So they invoiced us and they handled their own income tax. So now we do have a combination of employees who are on profit share under contractor agreements, but what I've phased those out now, and we're paying their same profit share out now as a bonus to their salary inside that quarter. So that's how we're handling them now. Yeah.
How are the founders paying themselves?
Yeah, not very much. Not as much as we'd like. Now, so we've taken a modest salary as well, and we're in the profit share system as well.
On the Geeks side or the other side?
So we're on the profit on Armello side for the points and tasks that we've completed, but we're also, most of the League of Geeks money is just pouring back into the company to keep the company running. But obviously as shareholders, that's our money too. But we don't hold the largest slice of the points, but we've been on this project for 6 years. So when it comes around to a quarter, we get a little bonus too.
A valuable thing worth noting is that we actually, anyone who takes,
Yeah, no, you're good.
anyone that takes points, if you're earning points, you're not getting paid a wage or a contract wage or anything like that.
For those same tasks.
Yeah, for those same tasks. So it's either points.
So you're not double dipping.
So for example, when Lizzie Kane, our producer, started with us, she opted to actually take 3 days on points, 2 days pay.
Correct.
Bachelorette just lives on her own, a little bit, flatmate, so she didn't have too many overheads.
Yeah, we had a couple of young programmers too who were happy to survive on, and they opted for this. They opted for only 2 days' pay or whatever it is, so they could earn 3 days on profit share because 2 days of pay was enough for them to pay their rent and live on. And I think they had confidence that the project was going to do pretty well and that the profit share was going to pay out better. And there's one artist who we have, and he still tries to refuse to take pay up front. He wants the profit share only. So I think he can see the advantage of this long term. Chris?
Given how you said it takes about 10 days per quarter for you to get all of this stuff processed, how sustainable do you think it is at scale to grow the team and keep this in place?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So right now I'm committed to this lifetime for Armello as long as profitable with the people we have. So there's about 46 people in this system right now. So as I said, we culled a few by buying a few back, and that was helpful. So I'm going to work as best I can to cut this 10-day overhead down every quarter, but I am committed to this. Moving forward, I think there's a question mark there I had, would we do a profit share system again? We would. Would we do it like this? We probably wouldn't. We probably would use a point system, but we probably would use it as a pure bonus system now. So we would just do on top of wages earned. If you were on the project, you would share in the profits. So we'd probably try and stagnate salaries as much as we can, and that's not from an evil side of things. It's that we'll probably feed as much of that into allowing the profits to be as big as they can so they can be shared around. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you, especially for the people who are primarily profit sharing, how do you then deal with burnout? Because they're working like maybe more than they really should.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, and that's a grim reality of it. We've been, we try to work as best we can. So we try to give people as much time leadway that we're about to issue them work, or if they're available for work. So we tell them that we're going to issue them work. Oh, Trent's got his hand up. You want to go?
So basically, at the start of the project, we changed, like I'm talking in the first year, we changed our production methodologies a lot, very rapidly. And one of the things we found out very quickly is when people are working out of hours in their spare time on a project, then they're essentially working 2 jobs, right? They're essentially working crunch, even if they're only working 4 hours a night. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll get, say for example, we'll get Gavin to do the modeling. But we quickly found out that if we just had Gavin doing the modeling, then having him also hit milestones meant he was just constantly crunching. So there were 2 things to this. We actually created pools of talent. So we could go to Gavin and say, hey, do you have time to do this model? And if he was like, no, because I've got, a couple of parties on or something this week, or I have to smash at work, then we would go to the next modeler and say, hey, can you do this work? And everyone knew that there were more people that can take the task. So they didn't feel bad. They didn't feel pressured to say no. They just be like, no, you know what, I can't come back on the next task. So that was a big part of it to ensure that people didn't burn out. But then also a lot of it was just us dealing with the fact that working under this production method meant that we couldn't have hard external deadlines on a lot of things, because some people would just get burnt out and they would just be like, oh, I can't work, or this thing's come up, or it's taking longer than expected. And so we tried not to have external deadlines that would break people.
It's very hard to motivate someone to do a task inside the next fortnight when they're working full time, when they're not receiving gratification or wages for that close now, like when those wages are like 2 years away. So it did slow down our project immensely. That's probably why we spent it took twice as long to produce as it did. Yeah. Question up here.
So you mentioned like the first pay went through on the first year of production, right? And then
The first pay went through, so we started collecting those profits from V1, and obviously if there was any profits at point of V1, they got added to that pool.
So V1 the release of the game.
Yeah, V1. So the first payout was a quarter after that.
Okay, yeah.
So we launched September 1st. So our first payout was calculated from that, what was that? So the September, so it was into the October quarter. Yeah.
A part of that, so what highlights who gets League Geeks payments and who gets Armello payments? Like how do you separate the 2 really well?
Yes. So everyone who worked on Armello, who was under the point system, that only functioned for Armello.
And then that administrative work went towards League Geek.
Yeah, and that was pretty much just the directors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. At the back.
So you've got a pretty big team and you use this complicated, robust system, but what would you recommend for smaller teams, like 3 or 4 people?
Yeah, this is difficult because I've talked to a bunch of people about this, and I think the biggest problem with a lot of profit share systems is they lock you in and they're not as adaptable. You have to account that, this awesome person you're talking to, this best coder or best artist, everyone's super excited about this project, and you're all signing up and you're just all giving everyone 30% or whatever it is, or 20 across the 5 of you, you're all going to share the profits. And then 6 weeks later, something happens. And one of them runs away. And they've signed a contract with everyone. They're getting 20% of this project. So you have to build in a system, I think, where people earn the profit share as they go. And they can earn it. It's like the share options. Here are the options that you're going to get when the project's finished, but everyone has to build up to that. So if any point in time, for any life reason, and it's not against you that you want to leave, because it's better to let someone leave if they want to leave than hold their handcuffs in the project. You have to allow that exit to facilitate. So advice is keep it agile, have all the exit clauses in place, and try and keep it fair. Obviously fair is the big part, but you have to look at where the profits are expected to be for the project and make sure that people's return on their profit share is actually worthwhile. And most profit shares I look at, and people are slicing it up, it doesn't work out. It's a scam almost. And they don't even know it's a scam. They don't even know that's what they're doing. They just, when they slice out the expected profits, it's not worth the contractor's time. Yeah. At the front again.
As you said, there would be a fair bit of risk going into a profit share system. If it hadn't worked out for you guys, did you have a plan noted down on how you would deal with that?
Yeah, really good question. And we did. So as I said in one of the slides, we actually, when we were close to launch, we were near cost neutral already. That was a big part of our project and how we steered the development. And that's why sometimes we took longer or we found more money along the way. We didn't want to launch with a big debt because we wanted to at least be above that disaster point. We thought, shit, if no one buys this game, we can only get our mum to buy it, with a couple of friends, then, we can hopefully just still hit that disaster point. And it's not going to be so bad.
I've one for you. Armello merchandising.
Yep.
Like the indie box and 3D print, etc. Do the profits of that also tie into the Armello, or does it go back to League of Geeks?
Yeah, very interesting. So what we've done is initially in the contracts they don't, but now they do, because it got too complicated to separate these. And also, we just sat down and did some hypotheticals, and we play the other side of the fence, and we do that a lot. So it's like, I'm a disgruntled contractor. We haven't had any of those yet. I want to scrutinise the books. I want to prove that, that's my asset that I did work for the game, and yes, it's being used 100% in the game, but now it's also being duplicated and used elsewhere. Yes, you have the rights to do that. Yes, I've signed a contract that's merchandise and you can use my designs or whatever it is. It's League of Geeks designs, but my efforts elsewhere. Do I feel good about that? No. Also, I think from the merchandising side of things, that feeds in and builds fan and strong fans and actually leads back into more sales of the game. And because we've been adding in-game content and DLC, and we're getting these super fans who've bought our 3D prints, and now they keep playing Armello for a little bit longer because they've got this miniature on their desk, and now they're buying DLC when releasing a new map pack. It's too complicated. It all feeds back into each other. We're creating this eco-cycle, ecosystem.
So where does the Twitch subscriptions feed in?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So the Twitch subscriptions right now, because they're all Armello, but they're building the League of Geeks channel, they are feeding into the Armello project. But the costs of those, theoretically they're going into the project, but the Twitch costs us more than we make. So theoretically they would be going into the Armello project, but they're getting wiped out. So yeah, that's a growing platform, and I see future in it. I know Trent sees he's just stepped out. We can talk about Trent now. No, he sees a bright future in the Twitch side. So I guess eventually, and especially when we start playing with different, because of our Twitch channels, so we've got 3 Twitch channels. One of them is not Armello at all. But right now, because it's not generating enough revenue, we're not too concerned. But in the future, when we're streaming, our new game plus Armello, we'll start dividing up that revenue. Yeah. So we'll actually try and work out how much should go to Armello, how much should go to the new game, how much should go to log. Yep.
Is there any talk about how a sequel would be handled in that system?
Yeah, so that's exactly what the dilemma I'm working at right now. So I'm designing a new system, and we're trying to make it fair. I'm using a point system again, but the point is now going to be not based on tasks, it's going to be based on days worked. So because the way the crew work, they're very efficient, they're all sort of working at the same similar level. We're looking at, instead of going, okay, this gun guy can achieve 18 points a day and this person can only achieve 6, we're going a point a day for the core crew, and it's days you've just attended and been part of that project. And I think that's how we're going to split out. I'm just doing modelling on how much the splits are.
Why would you do that as opposed to, if you're playing both sides and I'm the contractor or whatever, many assets are going to be recycled into the sequel. Obviously, I still have profit sharing into Armello, but
Yeah.
for the new as opposed to the time model? Why not that way?
Yeah, so we have done a little bit of that too. So what we have done is, if you imagine that you were a very early contributor into Armello and you've developed, because the initial game design only had 4 heroes, and you thought, okay, it's great, I'm going to model these 4 heroes, they're worth 24 points, whatever they are each. But as the scope of the game's gone and the profit pool's increased, your share has been watered down, because initially you'd signed up to a 7,000 point deal. The scope of the game's grown, but the system has accurately and I think fairly accommodated that. So if we were to do a new game, and that's not under an Armello IP, like an entirely new brand, I would treat that as an entirely fresh start, new profit pool. If we were to do an Armello sequel, which I think we will eventually, and we use a lot of what was there, then I would probably be putting in a determined slice out of that new game's profit into the old pool to keep that functioning. Because it started and paved the way for the sequel. So we'll go here at the front again.
So obviously your whole point today system is combining with the fact that most of your work is going to be done by paid staffers.
Yeah, now they are.
The bonus on top.
Yeah, but we couldn't afford to do that at the beginning. So that's where the main shift has become. Also, we do want to build some more stability for the studio, because right now we don't have a huge war chest. We're comfortable, but it's not like we're like, oh, we can kick back and like just make a new game and let it fail and it doesn't matter. We can enough money to build another. We're definitely not like that. We have to work very hard to build new train tracks, and we're laying tracks in front of the train speeding along. But everything's been very responsive to what we do when we design and produce content and release it. So we feel very confident about making rail tracks. You had a question up here, yeah?
You mentioned that your point allocation depended on kind of senior people and how long they estimated tasks to take. Say you didn't have anyone with such estimation skills, could you foresee another way of this working? Maybe looking back at.
Yep, we actually had this exact problem with the audio side and a couple of other areas, and we literally just went out to people we knew who were buddies of ours who were very good at what they did in those fields, and paid them as a consultant to actually give us an estimation across a bunch of tasks. So we had to pay them a consultant's fees of $600, whatever it might have been, to go through and just give us a breakdown of the next 700 tasks or whatever it might be. Yeah, that's how we did that. Yeah. I think, another one?
Last question. Just on top of your regular duties as just a director and co-founder of the company, how much actual work has this system added to your duties?
Yeah, it's a lot. So I primarily, when I started the company with the rest of the guys, was the game designer. I do system design. I've been a game designer for years and a level designer. That's my area. So now I probably do 10% game design. I sort of sweep in to design next updates content, or next updates like cards or new features, and try and statistically model them so I can balance them slightly, and then I get to play test them at the very end just before they're about to be released to catch any emergencies. But I do rely on the rest of the crew to solve a lot of design problems throughout the course of that update, because I'm stuck. I'm chasing. There's only 3 directors, and I'm chasing sales salary, working out platform deals with platform holders, and doing the profit share system. So yeah, my time's taken up. It's one of those things that you hear about chefs who start a business. They love cooking, so they open the restaurant, and all they end up doing is doing purchase orders and taking bookings, and don't do any cooking. So, yeah. Cool. Thank you everyone for coming, and you can always catch me, and there's my details still on the screen. Thank you very much.